How do you fix your dome alignment on your Kamado Joe? Today, I show you how.
Thanks HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video.
Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dead Barbecue, and I get this question perhaps more than anything else, which is how do I fix dome alignment, smoke leaks, and gasket problems like that? So that is what you're in for today. Now, we've got a scale here of a minute fix, something that's really easy, to almost open heart surgery where we're going to completely realign your dome. And I'm going to cover the gamut, everything from the quick fixes where you want to start and figure out if you actually have a dome misalignment issue. And if you don't, I'll show you how to fix it. And if you do have something that requires the open heart surgery, I'm going to do that today. I don't need to do it on mine. They're working quite fine. But since this is a question that comes up all the time, I want to take the chance to show you how to do it. And I couldn't find a lot of video resources that walk through this step by step. So that's what you're in for today. Now, as you notice, I'm in a table type setup, and this is a little bit more difficult to perform this type of surgery since you're a little bit limited on space. You can do it. How you doing? But it's not pretty. So I'm going to take them out of the table, get them in their carts. And there's another reason I have to do this, because I've shared on the channel before the saga of 2021 carries into 22 with the granite cracking on my nature cast tables. It's been an ongoing issue. They're still taking care of it, but the replacements are scheduled to come in the next week or so. So I have to get them out anyways, plus it will make it much easier for you to see what's going on with those adjustments. So without further ado, let's get into it. So our first test is all about figuring out if we need the complex open heart surgery version or if it's a quick and easy fix. And so to do that, you just want to get yourself a dollar bill or anything like that. And what we're going to do is test to see if we're getting an area where our dome is maybe got a high pressure point and a low pressure point, and that's allowing some smoke to leak. So come nice and close. I'll show you how we're going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to check a couple pressure points around the grill to make sure that we're getting an even latch. So to do that, we're just going to put a bill about halfway in, close our dome, and when we go to pull this bill, this is what we should get. It'll be something that we can remove, but there's a pretty good amount of tug force. So this side's good. Let's check the front. That's nice and tight there as well. Check the other side. That's good. And we'll check the back on each side. Nice and tight that side, nice and tight this side, or that side. Let's check this last side. Okay, so my Big Joe is good. There are no dome misalignment issues here. Let's go check the Classic real quick while we're at it. So as you can see on both Joes, as I mentioned, I thankfully don't have this issue of smoke leaking, but that's not to say many of you don't have that problem. So we're still going to perform the surgery as if we had an issue, and I'll show you how to put it back together. But before we do that, there is another series of adjustments that you can actually improve your dome alignment, especially if you're having an issue with how the grill latches. So before we do the open heart surgery, we're going to see if we can actually eradicate our problem without any complex adjustments, taking the bands off, taking the dome out, and realigning that. So let me bring you nice and close again and show you the types of adjustments that we can do in under a minute or two's worth of time. Okay, so a number of people have some issue, or they're calling their dome alignment an issue, which is really a latch alignment issue. And so if your dome is aligned and you've got sort of your kind of red bases or your bands aligned and you're not getting a leak, most likely you don't actually have a dome alignment issue. You have a latch alignment, which is where you come down here and it's hitting the latch and it won't close, and it takes a lot of force to push down, or it takes no force whatsoever and it's not really staying closed and it's maybe popping open. And so the design here on the Kamado Joe is really nice, since there's actually 4 adjustment points that we can make left to right. So you'll see these bolts here, bolts here, bolts there, bolts there. And what that allows these 2 plates to do is move left and right. So if we actually have an issue with the top part aligning up with the bottom, you've got a left and right alignment. The other thing that you can maybe see here, if I tilt the camera down a little bit more, is we've got this Allen set screw built into the latch. And what that does is it moves the latch vertically. So we've got left, right, as well as up, down. So those left, right, and up, down adjustments solve about 90% of dome alignment problems. People reach out and ask a question. Many didn't even know there was that vertical or left, right adjustment, and that will solve, like I mentioned, about 90% of the questions. But for the 10% of you where you actually do have a dome alignment issue, now this can happen, maybe, luck of the draw, you got one, came from the factory a little bit misaligned, or shipping, assembly, or just high heat cycles and you didn't have your bands tight and snug. You did something like a pizza and opening and closing and your dome shifted. So this is a cautionary tale for two reasons. One, just make sure your dome bands are always tight so you don't get any of that shifting. Most importantly, for the risk that your dome doesn't release from the bands itself. That's the real reason that you want to check those spring and fall. Or no fault of your own, you've done everything absolutely perfect and you've just got this issue. So no worries, we're going to fix that up today. So I'll rejoin you after a little bit of work here and calling some friends again to get these out into their carts so we can start to do the open heart surgery, and I'll take you through the whole process from beginning to end. I think we have in the business what they call a continuity problem. Wait till Sunday, they said. Only a small chance of snow, they said. Well, as you can tell, that didn't pan out and the weather has changed, but that's not going to slow us down. The good news is, from when I last left you, the replacement granite has shown up. So we've got the Joes out and I'm now able to get them back in. So before I put them back in, we're going to finish this one off and I'll show you all the adjustments you need to do to fix any dome misalignment issues. So I just need to go grab a couple tools so we can adjust our dome hinge and bands. But before I do that, I'll rejoin you after throwing it over to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Are you tired of setting unrealistic New Year's resolutions? If you've been following my channel for a while, you already know I changed my diet last year and lost 50 pounds. But one of the things that I struggled with as the year wore on is just keeping up with new ideas and meal prep. This year, do things differently and regain control over your food choices with HelloFresh. With calorie and carb smart meals, you can indulge in some of your favorite meals without any of the worries. HelloFresh helps our family stay on track with simple recipes along with fresh, pre-portioned ingredients that cut out those unnecessary trips to the grocery store. In addition to eating well, another New Year's resolution our family made this year is on our environmental impact. And that's why we were drawn to HelloFresh, because all the packaging and the materials that the food and meal kits come out has already been recycled. So not only is that great for the environment, but the pre-portioned meals also help make sure we save time on prep and there's less chance of any food waste. Go to HelloFresh.com and enter the code SDBarbecue16 to receive up to 16 free meals, as well as 3 surprise gifts. Thanks again, HelloFresh, for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the action. Okay, I have my 10mm socket, which is what we're going to need to tackle these bolts. So depending on what you're doing, you should have 6 on the top, 6 on the bottom, 3 on each side, which is what is attaching our airlift hinge to our dome assembly. Now, depending on the type of issue you have, you may not need to tackle the bottom. And so one of the things you want to look for is how aligned are your bands all the way around. So if you look at mine here, you can see that they're a nice parallel and aligned. And again, we weren't failing that dollar bill test, so they shouldn't be misaligned. But if you have some misaligned bands, depending if that's the top or bottom, is really going to determine if you need to loosen just the top or just the bottom. But before we loosen anything, this is the time now where you're actually going to make use of this funny little tool you saw when you unpacked your Joe and you said, what's that for? That's exactly for this, because what we're going to do is we're going to install this underneath and lock our airlift hinge, which is going to help make centering our dome and putting everything back together properly to make sure we don't have any issues. So let me bring you nice and close. We're going to install this and we'll get to work on loosening our nuts so we can reposition our dome. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see this. Angle is not very great, but what we're going to do is take this long part that we received with our Joe, slide that up, which is just going to expose a little bit of threaded area here. Whoops, can't do that one-handed. And then what we'll do is we will take our washer, then our nut. So let me take it fast forward. I can use both hands and we'll just get this on. Okay, so now that we have that latch lock on, when I go open the dome, you see it doesn't want to open, so that is sealed into place. So what we're going to do is start by loosening, not removing, the 6 screws across the back of the top of our band here. So with just loosening those 6 bands, we'll be able to move our dome from left to right and front to back here until we get it lined up. So if that's our only issue and we're not trying to work on solving the band alignment to make sure it's parallel, we don't need to go any further. We can just get to work to sliding our dome to where we can actually get that to be lined up all the way around. But just to show you, I'm going to go remove that acorn nut as well. Okay, to release the dome from the band, we just need an Allen key that we're going to slide in here, as well as our socket to start loosening the actual band assembly. And another reason that you may want to do this, other than the adjustment that we're making right now, is once our dome is released from the band, this is an easier way to actually get it out and replace a gasket. So if we were trying to replace the gasket, we could do this, take it out, set our dome upside down on a towel somewhere safe where it's not going to get damaged, chipped, or scratched, and it makes much easier work of trying to replace the gasket in an inverted upside down Spider-Man manner. So I think that's about all I need. Oh, a little bit more here. So now that we've released this completely, we'll be able to just lift in and pull our dome right out. So now that we have our dome out, we can get to work to realigning it. So if you were having any of those issues where it wasn't seated properly, this is where we want to drop it back in, make sure it's aligned and that there's even pressure all the way around. This is also the reason why that tool that we put on our airlift hinge is so important. If we didn't have that, the pneumatic pressure of this right now would be flying open, because again, that's what makes the dome weightless. So if you forgot that step, you may get hit, injured, and or have that go flying and have a really hard time getting it back into place. So now we're going to begin the reassembly process. We're going to go exactly the opposite of what we did. So I'll get the dome, we'll position it back on here, make sure it's aligned nice and center. Then we'll get to work on putting in our Allen key and set screw over here. So our hex nut is tight, tighten the dome band back up. And then we need to reattach the bands to the dome itself using those 6 screws. And we're going to do this in a pattern. So we're going to start in the same, so maybe the leftmost position on the outside, tighten that, go to the right outside, then the middle, and then the inside and the inside until we have those all nice and snug. And you're looking for about 10 foot-pounds of torque here. If you have a torque wrench, that can be that precise. So take you fast forward, we'll get to work and getting our dome back on. Make sure that we can pass the dollar bill test once again when this is all together. Okay, I've dropped my dome on, pretty happy with the rough alignment front to back, left to right. Now before we put this on and just start tightening it, I don't want to tighten it past my airlift hinge lock. So I'm just going to take the opportunity real quick, remove that. So when we are cranking this tight, that it's not getting in the way of our latch, and then we'll put that back on. Plus it'll give me the opportunity to show you the left and right alignment as part of getting everything back the way it should be. Okay, perfect. So now when we go to tighten that, we won't worry about hitting the latch, and then we'll realign that once we've got everything back together. Okay, so now we're ready to start mating our bands together. So once we have that finger tightened, it's not going to fly anywhere. And we're going to want to pay attention to this as we start tightening to, again, make sure that we keep our distance equal all the way around our band. Okay, so just using my fingers, I've pulled the band up all the way around to the point where it's nice and flush and even as it was before. So we'll check this a few times as we begin to tighten our bands back up. Looks like it's tightening nicely, so we can continue. Okay, so now that our band's tight, we're going to get to work on tightening these again. Rotate here. So we're going to, again, work our way left, outside, left middle, right middle, left inside, right inside. Don't think I mentioned before, but you can actually use, when you're looking to line up your dome, these screws remain as a bit of a spacer. And since I know that I was aligned centered at least before between the top and the bottom, when I now see this sitting directly between the middle of these 2 screws, it helps me know if I have my dome aligned or if I've got it a little bit off and my thermometer is going to be askew. But that all looks good, so we can start to put this assembly back together. There we go. Over the
latch clip there. Make sure we have it aligned left and right. That looks centered to me, so we can tighten that up. Okay, looks good. Again, we won't really be able to release this until we remove the bolt at the back. Let's do that now. Okay, so now we're going to remove the bolt holding our airlift hinge piece together. Everything's out, so we'll save our washer, bolt, and nut that I had go flying here for a future day if we need them. Okay, moment of truth, maiden voyage. All we have to do now is test our opening close, make sure we're happy with the fitment, and then we're going to go back to our dollar bill test and check all the way around. First, let's see how we did. Make sure it doesn't go flying. Now we know what we're doing. Never a doubt. So that looks good. Alignment is good, exactly lined up where we want, and looking all the way around at the bands, which you want to pay attention to, the bands, not the gasket, because the gasket can flatten out and give you a false sense of left to right, but everything here looks perfectly aligned, so come nice and close, we'll do our dollar bill test. Okay, so let's start with the left side here. Nice and snug, back corner. Nice and snug, front. That's good. Front here. Looks good. Right side, I'll come around so I'm not blocking the view. Looks good. And back. Perfect. All right, so lastly, what we were looking for with that dollar bill test is nice, equal clamping force all the way around. What we don't want to have is one side where we can't remove the bill and the other side where it just slides out as if there's no force. That was nice, even tension. But if you'd like an extra level of security, you can get a pellet tube smoker or start a small fire, let it build up some heat, and then turn everything off and see if there's any smoke leaking. I don't think we're going to have that problem since I was getting nice, even clamping force on that dollar bill all the way around our Joe. So we are ready to get back to grilling. Thanks so much for asking to make this video. If there's anything else you'd like me to cook or do maintenance-wise, let me know in the comments down below. It'd be my pleasure to add it to a future video. Also, while you're down there, check out the members section. I go live one-on-one, and this is one of the questions that came up in a live session where I can answer your questions a little bit more real-time in an intimate way versus these pre-recorded videos. So check the details out in the description along with everything else that might be of interest to you. That's it for today, though. So until next time, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue signing off. And remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.